Oh, well, we are so happy to have you here, Leslie. Let me just give a quick introduction. Leslie Glogau. So, you have actually worked with me and done at least 20 past life
It's
regressions
amazing.
up to this point. And I have to add, you are also one of my soul coaches that is currently in training with me in our 3-month training. And you're going to become a soul coach of all of the things that you have been studying and learning throughout, gosh, for the past years. And you are an absolute pro, I think, already at this. So welcome, Leslie. And we're so happy to have you.
I'm so happy to be here.
I know, and you're in a conscious mind. Usually I see you in
Yes, I'm unconscious.
and your subconscious state, yes. But you have had, oh my gosh, some of the most fabulous regressions. I've always saying that mostly people go back to regular lifetimes. They were a teacher, a healer, maybe of some type, just a regular person. But you have had a regular person experience and then famous people's experiences that have given me goosebumps time and time again, I have to tell you. Do
I
you
know.
think you're a bit unique in that area, don't you?
Well, yes. I mean, I sometimes when I wake up, I'm just in shock. I can't believe where I've been and who I've been.
Yes.
Leslie, was past life regression, the idea of past lives, something that was always in your belief system, or was this new when you started working with Mom?
No, I mean, when I was living in Virginia, which is probably 25 years ago, I was at a client's house right by the battlefield and in Manassas, and we were talking about this and that, and somehow we got into talking about ghosts, because when I lived in England, I had been in a haunted house where the ghost actually tried to kill me. It was very bizarre, but it was a lady ghost who didn't like ladies, and she literally, if I had walked out of the room in the night to pee, I would have fallen down the stairs and killed myself. She did that. She put the wastebasket right at my door. So we were talking about stuff like that, and he said to me that they lived on the battlefield and they hear voices occasionally, and one morning he was upstairs smelling bacon and eggs and coffee, and he thought, oh, the wife's making me breakfast, isn't that nice? Went downstairs, there was no one home, the kitchen was completely cleaned up and dark, and so we got to talking, and they said to me that they had read a book by Brian Weiss called Many Masters, Many Lives. And we started talking about it. And I went, oh my God, I need to do this. But I tried to investigate Brian Weiss a little bit, and there's really no way you could see Brian Weiss. So I just forgot about it. And then one day, after about a year of being in therapy with your mom and nothing happening, no movement was going forward on this one particular issue, she said to me, would you be interested in a past life regression? Do you know what it is? And I said, oh my God.
Oh, so aligned, of course.
Brian Weiss. And she said to me, I studied with Brian Weiss. And that was the beginning of 20 odd past life regressions.
Amazing.
And so change for you, and pivotal change through the
pivotal. I mean, I was really, really, really broken, and each past life has filled in a piece. And apparently, I signed the most insane birth contract, and I just made my life a living hell, and was fixing everything that was wrong with me from the past million years. And hopefully, my next life's going to be a lot easier.
It sounds like you chose to work out a lot of the lessons in this life.
I did.
I must
have had about 20 or 30 to work out. So,
Nearly all of them. Oh my gosh.
We've been working.
Yeah.
Really hard. Yeah, it's been interesting, fun, interesting. I love past life regressions, obviously.
You do.
Well, it sounds like it's been insanely rewarding for you too to get the answers and healing that you need.
It's so healing when you go back and see the life that maybe the event happened that didn't heal.
Yeah.
In that life, and then you've carried it in your cells all the way through. I mean, I've had some really insane deja vu experiences.
Okay. So let's dive in.
Well, wait, let's dive in because I know trying to, figure out what's the most interesting. There's so many. So again, we may have Leslie back on another show because she has had the most interesting lifetimes. Let's just jump in to one that fascinated you the most, I know, which was Madame du Barry.
Madame du Barry. Yes. Yeah. I was Madame du Barry. I was the mistress of Louis XIII, and I lived in Versailles, and I had a lot of power, and I had obviously money and gorgeous jewelry. And I mean, I wasn't the nicest person to a lot of people, especially apparently to Marie Antoinette, which did not serve me well later on.
Hey, Leslie, what was your intention for this regression? Did you have an intention to go back and heal something particular?
I think we just went.
Okay.
Some of them are targeted,
we asked for your soul to lead you to the lifetime you need to be the most at that point in your life.
So kind of gave it up to the intuition of what you needed.
Sometimes we target it, and sometimes, like one of them, half the person came out in the regression before I even got there. So I was going somewhere that someone had something to tell me.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes she sees a leg sticking out into the lifetime, and then she will be flashed into a different life. So sometimes her soul has different lifetimes to choose from. She's very interesting.
Oh, wow.
Yes. But okay, going back to Madame du Barry, we let your soul choose that lifetime. And what was the
what year-ish?
Yeah.
Are we? What year around are we at?
1700s.
Okay.
Early 1700s. Yeah. I think a lot of Madame du Barry had to do with sexual healing, because that was a big part of it. That and my insane love of beautiful clothes and jewelry.
Yeah, it explained to you where that comes from, doesn't it?
Yeah, I had a couple of lives in France where I understood the love of beautiful fabrics and clothes. And I've had a couple of other lives, Madame du Barry being one that combines both, but I had other lives that had the jewel thing in it. But yes, laughingly the other day I was saying, I have all the abilities and talents to be a rich lady. I just don't have the money.
But you could step into that role quite easily, I think.
I've been in practice for being a rich lady for centuries. I just don't have the money in this lifetime.
So help me understand, because you two seem to know this lifetime really well. I'm still learning. What happened in the regression for you that caused all this sexual healing?
Well, I don't think the regression itself did, but I think there was a point where I was, I can read it to you.
Because it was in probably you experienced the life, but it's after the lifetime that you start to unpack the spiritual lessons and the soul healing.
Oh, this is because this was a kind of a weird life, but and it went from extremes, but it was like I could be abused at times, and then I could not be abused. So I learned from this lifetime that I deserve to be loved and to have no shame. about, what I was doing. And so I was using, in that life, I was using sex to get what I wanted.
Oh, okay.
So there was some sexual healing that went on there. Because if I want to be open about in this life, I've been able in this life to use sex to get what I want. It didn't bother me at all. I could be like, a guy who just, one and done,
Sure.
I mean, no, and no emotion attached to it. And so, I needed some healing there.
Yeah.
Because it was a carryover from this life.
And so learning that in that past life, how did that affect this life?
Well, it allowed me, I think, to stop being that person who used my body or sex to get what I wanted from someone, and to focus more on the emotional aspect of it and the closeness that you can get from it. Whereas I could before just kind of sail through life and not, I didn't have that closeness except with one person, but nobody else. And so, I think I learned how to channel the emotional aspect of it.
It's huge.
It's huge, yes. And from that also came unconditional love for yourself, forgiveness,
right. Instead of disliking myself, because I think that part of my I never really liked myself that much. I'm very hard and negative about myself, and part of that, I'm sure, was hooked up with all of this stuff. And so in finding a way to heal that part of me and allowing myself to feel the emotions that are attached to a loving relationship rather than just using someone to get what you want, it was very healing.
So you had that really felt sense of the emotional connectedness from that lifetime.
Right.
It's like almost a reminder of that's what is possible and to be able to have in this life.
Yeah.
Ish. Wow.
Yeah, and an interesting thing too about Leslie, I think, is that after we do the regression, she's always so fascinated because, I mean, that was very, very famous. And yet she gave all of these explicit details. And so after each regression, she always you do go back, don't you? And you research like, oh, was this the year? Was this accurate? And my gosh, the accuracy you always discover blows your mind.
I know. Sometimes I can't believe that it's real. I wake up and I think, I made it all up.
Sure.
And then your mom is like, well, I was Googling while you were under, and this one, I can't believe this, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I guess I didn't.
Yeah. When you start going back into a past life and you hit a century and it is someone famous, I pull it right up on my phone. I'm looking at it as you're talking and I can see the time sequence of the events you're talking in there.
Yeah, but the one that was interesting with the looking up was, and it's not a famous person, was the Austrian thing with the war. And I was talking about uniforms, and your mom looked up a war in that time period, and there were the uniforms I was describing. I mean, it was crazy.
Yes.
So,
and the fact checking just allows you to fully drop into the trust of this is true.
Right. Because, first of all, you lie there for 3 hours and think you're there for 5 minutes. And then
totally.
You wait, and, and you think, well, I mean, none of this can be real. How could this be even real? I'm time traveling. This is crazy. But you do and it isn't, I mean, it's amazing. It's just amazing.
Fact checking and between the closure that you feel with what surfaces and the peace that comes after, that's the knowingness of how effective it is, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable how healing it is.
Yes.
It's just insane.
And every time you share one of your experiences with one of your friends or clients, they're always like, oh, I want to do that. Can I do that? who can I call for that? I mean, she's like the biggest proponent of past life regression of
That's
any.
so good.
I mean, I personally love time travel. I mean, to me, this is like the best thing ever. Plus, I love being hypnotized. I don't know why, but anyway, it just to me, I love going back, and I love seeing all of the lives that I've had and all the people that I've been. And some of my lives have been hideous, and some of them have been wonderful.
Mm. Because we know only about 20% of people visualize and see their lives. A lot of people intuit or they feel, they just know. Are you one of those that sees the life through your eyes with
I see everything.
Yeah.
I'm like the person, I mean, I'm an observer at my life, but I see everything. It's in, Technicolor.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
The other thing, Sarah, that's interesting is how Leslie discovered, I mean, she had such specific things growing up that she felt, not the usual things. And then it was through the regressions that she understood, right, Leslie?
Yes.
How you were feeling. Tell Sarah some of those things.
When I was a little kid, maybe 10, I came out with this statement. When I get married, it's going to be 3 days on and 4 days off. I want to marry a traveling salesman. I do not want someone there 7 days a week. And I never wanted children. I always used to say, if I had kids, I'd probably end up a bolter, because I never wanted ever to have anybody dependent on me for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And
So,
you also said, remember, and if for some reason you did have kids, that you wanted a full-time nanny. Remember?
and if I did have a kid, I wanted 24 hours, 7-day-a-week nannies.
Yes.
And I would spend 1 hour a day with them, because quality time would be better than quantity. I had never seen anything British. I had never known what it was like to be, having a nanny that, like they do, you see now in British stuff. I never knew anything like that. I was 10 years old. And when I was 10, I mean, that was like 1961. So we're talking before the internet.
Right. You're not reading about it.
I'm not reading about any of it. It's not been in my life experience. I don't know anyone who has any.
Recalling a past life.
Recalling all this stuff and not knowing that I am. Isn't that crazy?
I can only imagine what your parents would.
My father used to freak out. What? 3 days a week on? I would go, the only one I can cope with.
But you also figured out you never wanted to have children, because how many lifetimes have you gone back to?
Where I was dirt poor and had loads of kids. And, I mean, I just never wanted any of it. Or I would watch other people's kids. In one lifetime, in the fat Danish girl, I had to watch my sister's children. Because I had no money, I was single, because I, whatever. Anyway, it was, I would see these lives and they were so not for me. And
it sounds like, and whenever you were watching kids, it was always related to being really poor and unhappy.
Right. So I was never happy. I never, and again, with the, I don't want anybody dependent on me kind of thing. Kids are dependent on you for the whole of their lives.
Forever, right, Mom?
It's a forever thing.
It's not till 18.
Turns around and Mom is dependent on you. Right. And then you see why you really didn't want kids. Because you've got someone who's giving back what you gave her when you were a teenager. So, no, thank you.
And the other part of it, or you were in royalty and you did have the nannies 24/7. And
I did in that happy life that we went to heal the David piece. Yes, I was very wealthy and did have nannies and all of that. Yeah, that was one of my lives. Yes.
Yeah. So interesting discoveries that she's made. And okay, we have to talk about, oh my gosh, the one that sent absolute goosebumps down my arms. when you
You
were
mean
with
Chopin?
Hitler.
Oh, Hitler.
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 Oh,
That's the one.
wow.
That's the one. I wasn't Hitler. I
Was
No, I wasn't Hitler. I mean, that's the one where the girl was coming out at me, where I was coming out at me before I was even fully hypnotized. Okay. She was like dragging me in.
Yeah.
Okay. I was a 20-year-old Spanish girl from a wealthy Spanish family, and my parents married me off to a Spanish Nazi. And he was much older. He was in his 50s. And so I lived with him. I had a very unhappy marriage, but I had a happy side in that I was rich. I could go shopping and I could buy lots of jewelry and clothes. Okay, there we go. Happy girl on one hand, right? But on the other piece, the intimacy piece, again, it was, I was literally using my body to make him happy and get whatever I wanted. So no love lost. So my parents were killed in an Allied bombing over Madrid. And, I was sad because they were my parents and I was stuck with this guy. And then he and we went to Germany because he was a high level Spanish Nazi. And we went to Germany and we went at an event and met Hitler.
Oh,
And
I see.
Hitler
look
was
on your face.
the look on my face apparently was of extreme disgust. And I mean, I didn't want to meet him. I met him and Ava Braun because they were there. And I just didn't say anything other than hello. And, we lived. I mean, he worked with them. He was a Nazi. Okay. And we lived in Berlin. And, of course there were air raids and things. And I was all alone because I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. But I also, he wasn't there because he was always busy working and things. And then when I was really young, I died at about 23 in that life. And I wasn't sad about dying. I hated that life. And I was happy to die. And I died in a bombing raid.
But this was so significant for you because share your story of when you actually, in this lifetime, went to visit over there.
To Madrid?
Well, when I was when I was 17, I was in East Berlin.
Okay.
And I was standing in the square that Hitler delivered the can. Yes, I was on the Experiment in International Living. We were going to Finland where I was going to spend the summer, but we went a few places first. Anyway, we had gone from West Berlin to East Berlin, and we went through Checkpoint Charlie, and all of that was very different back then. And there was no man's land in the middle, and and the wall was there. Anyhow, I'm standing in the square that he made the candlelight speeches, and I'm standing there and I'm like hearing screaming and Heil Hitler, and evil is permeating the air. And I'm like getting so freaked out. And I had to get out of there. And I turned to someone. I said, "Do you feel or hear anything?" And they looked at me like I was out of my mind. But I mean, I had been there, obviously, and it was all there, and all the evil was still there in the air. And even in those days, in 1969, East Berlin was still bombed out. So you'd see the front of a building and you'd walk back and there's no building. And, so they hadn't rebuilt. So all the evil was still there. And I mean, it was so horrible. And I was so creeped out. I had never had a deja vu experience before. It was my first one. And,
were you able to make sense of that at that time? You were 17?
I didn't understand what was happening.
Right.
I really didn't. And then I was in front of a a bombed out temple, and it had been one where they gathered the Jews to take them to the camps. And it was, I started talking to an old Jew who had survived, and we were talking about it, and it was also full of desperation and evil. I mean, the whole time I was in East Berlin, all I could feel was evil. It was so, and I didn't understand it because, I mean, I never had that kind of an experience before. I mean, I lived in Long Island. What experience can I have there?
That's wild.
Born again as a Jew, which is interesting, right? Yeah.
Right.
So in that lifetime, what was the soul lesson? What was the healing? What was the purpose of going back? Forgiveness.
Yes. I had to forgive myself because in my cells, I felt guilty for not helping people to survive. And I mean, I could barely survive myself. And so I had to give myself forgiveness.
That's one of the hardest things for people to do.
So that was my soul lesson there, was forgiveness.
Which related 2 times in this lifetime where you
right. And then in that life, when I went up to the the resting place, that was when David came to see me and was telling me how much he loved me, and he was so grateful that I had connected with his boys.
And who is David for all of us?
David is the love of my life. He committed suicide, and I never got over that, and I carried this anger with me. Plus, he was my husband in what should have been my happiest life, but I was angry with him for 250 years. I mean, seriously, This is true. He died young, and he fell off a horse and hit his head and died. And I had asked him not to leave, not to go where he was going. And so I was angry at him for 250 years. So, I mean, there's a lot of healing.
Yeah. Okay. So then when you were on the other side, what was that like telepathic conversation with him?
Well, he was there. And
this is the first time you got to have a closure or a conversation with him since he committed suicide.
Right. I mean, that was not from this life, not from the German girl life, but from the other one.
Yes.
In that life, he was there. He was there a lot after that when I went up, because I couldn't let him go. I couldn't release him. So he would meet me in the resting place every time I go up there. And he would hold me and tell me that he loved me and all of that. And until I was able to allow him to go. And I finally was able to allow him to go. And but it took a long time. I mean, it took a lot of regressions before I was allowing him to go, because I kept calling him back. I mean, in the beginning, I mean, I used to call him at night. I mean, he'd be in bed with me at night. I mean, I would not let him go.
So now when you think about him, is that anger still present?
No. When I think about him now, I just feel sad. I feel sad that he's missed our life together, and he's missed his grandchildren, and he's missed so much.
Which makes sense, right? The sadness makes sense.
Sadness, and I mean love, of course, but it's sadness, not anger, not any of the things that were, not regret, just that overall sadness. And occasionally I call him in and we have a little visit.
It was so interesting because after he committed suicide years later, his children got in touch with you, right, Leslie? And you have this wonderful relationship with him now. And he was so happy about that, which you could hear when
that came.
Ooh, I got goosebumps.
When I saw him after the German girl, that's when he told me how happy he was that I had connected with his boys and that I was there for them. And I actually had helped one of them out financially at one point. And so he was very, very grateful to me for that. And, it was a kind of a closure. But but you know, it's never closed, is it? When a piece of you is missing, I mean, it's never closed. But
well, it sounds like you close out the anger.
I definitely closed the anger, and I definitely was able to let him go, so that he's not a daily presence in my life where I can't move on. He's in the background, like all good grief should be. You know, you grieve and then you push it then it gradually goes to the background, and it's there because the person is gone and you love them. But it's not in the forefront, and you're not dealing with it on a daily basis, and you're not dealing with the anger and the misery and the frustration and all the other things that happen when someone commits suicide.
Yeah.
You know, you're angry at them.
And that has been one of the most healing things for clients that come in to do regressions that have had somebody commit suicide, is to be able to have these closure conversations that they couldn't understand why. They hear the why, they hear everything, and it is the most healing space. So not unusual that you had that experience. But just for our listeners and as a point of interest, so it is always up to the client to decide whether you're ready to have these conversations. Perhaps you'd like to share about your father in that space when you met.
Yes. Okay. So my bio dad, he and I didn't speak since I was 20. There was an event. His stepson, my stepbrother, was getting married, and my college roommate, who was from a famous American family, the whole family, everybody was having like major events, milestone birthdays, and there was a big party that I was invited to. And I mean, to me, there really wasn't any, you know, I mean, I didn't even have to weigh the options here. I mean, I was going to the party. I mean, forget about the other thing. So my middle stepbrother said to me, if you don't go to this wedding, we are never going to speak to you again as long as you live. I said, okay, have a nice life, and hung up the phone. I didn't realize that my father was never going to speak to me again either. So we never spoke again for the rest of his life. Wow. Anyway, I'm up there in the resting place between lives, and he's there one day, and I'm like, I ain't talking to him. I'm not talking to you. I don't want to talk to you. And I didn't. And when I came back, and I was like, I'm not talking to him. I don't want anything to do with him. You know, he can't say anything to me that I want to hear, you know. Yeah. Anyway, finally, Petey, the next time it happened, she kind of encouraged me to hear what he had to say. I didn't want to do that then either, but
you trusted.
I agreed to hear what he had to say.
Sure.
And he apologized. You know, my bio dad was a very damaged man. He had been he was a pilot, and he flew bombing missions over Germany, and he had PTSD, which we didn't recognize back in the 50s. And he was very damaged, and I guess he did the best he could, which wasn't very good. But I allowed him to apologize to me, and I allowed him to explain that he did love me, but, you know, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so we had a little healing moment there. I mean, more for him than for me, I think, but we both healed our relationship, and he went away, and I've never had to deal with him again.
Well, you let go of your anger towards him.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I mean, you know, I've let go of my anger, I think, towards everybody at this point in my life, which has been, you know, it has been freeing not to be angry. It's a very freeing feeling when you're not angry anymore. You know,
because
these roots stuff.
And
these
to give
are other emotions.
Yeah, and to give a lot of context on the anger. So you also were depressed your entire life, waking up severely depressed, which we know is anger turned inward, which you
Right.
never realized.
Right.
And
I woke up every day of my life for what, 60 years?
Oh, gosh.
Angry. And I was depressed. I was so depressed. I'd wake up. I didn't wake up with a black cloud, but the minute I opened my eyes, a black cloud would come down and I would be depressed. And I was severely depressed. And I don't know, sometimes I don't really understand how I got through all the things I did. But I mean, but the people I attracted into my life, they were people that they were abusive, they were nasty, they were cold. You know, I brought in people that fueled my depression and gave me a reason to, it gave me a conscious reason to be depressed. So yeah, it validated my depression. So it was, and then one day I woke up and the cloud didn't come down, and I was like, wait a minute.
let go of all your anger.
Right. And I was like, wait, I don't know what this feels like. Wait a minute, and it was so cool that, I wasn't depressed. I woke up and I felt light, and that was the beginning of when I think my vibration started to rise, and I started attracting different kinds of people into my life. It was, interesting. It was just so interesting to see.
Do you attribute that to like one particular lifetime that had a lot of anger, or was it kind of collective?
It was collective.
Yeah.
There was a lot of anger and frustration, and so many bad things happened. Obviously we're not going to go into all my bad lives, but I have been married for my money and abandoned, and I have been, abused. I have been taken advantage of. There are so many lives where you wouldn't want to have been me.
Yeah, deep pain and hurt.
Right.
So that valid that you were so angry.
Yes.
Yeah, valid.
And so in going to those lives and seeing them and healing from them, the anger has gone away. Past lives have literally taken all the broken pieces and put them back together.
It's so
unbelievable.
validating to hear.
I know.
Healing, it's just, to actually be a witness to all of your healing is a gift for me too. It's just the gift that doesn't stop giving. It is all of the healing that happens. Well, and I'm so, you're so open, you're so transparent. And the thing that people would also love to hear is, here you were depressed, the majority of your life and so angry. And yet in our soul coaching training, every single person describes you as the happiest person they've ever met.
So light, so happy.
Yes, I know. We speak about, Leslie and I speak about the irony of it all.
Oh, it's so funny because it's ironic, because if they knew where I came from to where I am today, if they knew my backstory, they would not believe, who I am today. And I see it in all of my life. When I meet people, everyone, they're hugging me and, oh, I love spending time with you. And it's like, oh, okay, great. It's just, it's so different from the way my life had been up until the last few years, but even until the last year. I think things are so different in the last year, as far as the way people respond to me. And part of that, I guess, is how I respond to myself, because my self-talk has always been interesting. And, my self-talk nowadays is so different. But my original self-talk, Petey used to just cringe.
Well, 60 years of depression, anger, needing to forgive yourself. I'm sure you were a tough critic to yourself.
I was so negative about everything about myself. And there wasn't anything nice I could say about myself.
So now what would you say about you?
I say I'm great.
Yeah.
I mean, I like me. And when people say, we did that exercise, like, what can't you do? What won't you do? And what can you do? And my immediate response was, there's nothing I can't do. Because there is nothing I can't do. And I don't think there's anything that anybody can't do. If you set your mind to it, you can do it. It's just about the attitude. And my attitude about me and my life now is I can do anything I want to do. I'm very positive. I think highly of myself. I respect myself, and I like myself. I
And
enjoy.
when you make a mistake, what do you say?
I say, I made a mistake. Let's fix it. Go. Instead of saying, and I will say this, I will say it only once. You fucking idiot! How could you do that?
Oh, that was the talk. That was the self-talk.
Right.
Tough.
24/7. That was
how I used to talk to myself.
I mean, if that's a dialogue that was going in your head, then yeah, the behavior of being this black cloud that was over you, those two align for sure.
They go really well. And if you heard what I say about myself when I just look in the mirror, that too aligned, and I am not going there.
Yeah, no need.
That is it's too ugly, and I don't want to bring it back. But I mean,
well, it's not you anymore, so it's so inauthentic that it's hard to go back there.
Right. It was like when we were trying to do that self-talk the first time in the training. I said to your mom, I said, I can't go back and say what I did. I made something up. I mean, I couldn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
unbelievable.
It's like 180 degrees. It's just unbelievable.
Well, experiences are unbelievable with past life because there's so many. It's quite unique. We'll just end with one last lifetime that was, again, as I said, most people have very ordinary. No, you were Frederic Chopin.
Yes.
So would you care to speak to that lifetime?
Well, I mean, I was Chopin. I had an affair with George Sand. I had a patroness who took care of me. I composed music, and I did play in Vienna with the orchestra. And, I lived in Paris and played in salons and, did all kinds of cool things. But I loved Poland, and I believe my heart was buried there. I mean, but the thing that came from that was creativity. That was my life lesson from that, was opening up my creativity. I mean, the music gene is in my family. My grandfather was a composer. My nephew is a genius with music. It skipped me. I got no music in me. But I do have other creative talents with the art and the writing. I am very creative. So
is that what got re-sparked for you?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. She reawakened the cell memories of creativity, which we know you're going to be writing your book.
If I stopped deleting it instead of saving it.
I know. But Leslie is incredibly creative. So her paintings, and when she says she paints, you should see her paintings, Sarah. They could hang in a museum. Her writing ability, her cooking ability is insane. I mean, she is so talented in so many ways. It's wild. And we can see from a lot of your lifetimes, you keep reawakening more and more and more cell memories because she loves them so much. It's like, well, let's go back to my happiest lifetime. Well, let's go back to my most artistic life. Let's go back to my most creative, because we can reawaken all of these memories. So it's not only for the healing of these where there needed to be soul healing, but it's a reawakening that you've created.
Yeah. I mean, I've had some fun lifetimes. I mean, I was a printer, and I was an artist with art showings. And I mean, I was a court painter in Italy during the Renaissance.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, I
think that is good for people to hear, that it's not only negative lives to heal. It's also
there's just so many. I mean,
passions you can reawaken.
My happiest life, I was a farmer, and that reawakened my green thumb.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm a gardener, you know. I mean, I never was. I'd kill everything. And all of a sudden, after that, my garden bloomed. I
Oh my
mean,
gosh.
it was like so incredible.
Well, she had a lifetime in Italy where it was her happiest lifetime, and she had vineyards, and she would stand in the vineyards. And literally after this, she started her garden. She had killed everything, and she has the most gorgeous garden you'd ever want to see in your life.
So yeah, I mean, that one was really interesting because I literally had a brown thumb. I mean, I killed anything that came within 10
Oh
feet.
my gosh, that's like such tangible proof.
I know. And then after that regression, I started having a green thumb. It was so insane the way that happened. It was amazing. And I mean, yeah, there's tangible proof that you can reawaken stuff because there it is. I mean, it was crazy.
Oh my gosh. I love it. You are full of stories. My word.
I know.
Well, after 20 odd regressions, you know, what to say.
Amazing.
Yes, I am encouraging her to write a book. She has another book in mind, but writing a book of her most interesting past lives, because it's so helpful for people to hear these and how tangible the healing is in so many ways. And she has some of the most fascinating lifetimes. I mean, truly. So yes, that's on your list of things to do.
It's
right?
on my list if I stop deleting things. Yeah, I mean, it's really, I mean, I woke up at 4:30 in the morning one day, and I guess my spirit guide had put this book in my head, and I got up, and a couple of hours later, and I, you know, start to write it down, and I'm typing, and I go to save it, and I hit delete.
But you and I processed that did.
Yes, but it was interesting because I figured out why, because I had just been at book club, and the ladies and I had read a book, and they were going on and on about how there was all these, you know, body parts, and people were talking about, you know, intimate things, you know, just, and they couldn't even say the words, right? And they were just like, it just wasn't necessary. And I'm reading the book. I didn't even see any of them because I've been doing research on rom-coms, and let me tell you how filthy they are. And I have been learning all kinds of new sexual things. I mean, I thought I was adventurous, right? But I had no idea that the human body could do some of this stuff. But anyway, so I've written this book, started this book, and I had done it more in the vein of what I had been reading, right? And so in the first chapter, there was a very graphic sex scene. And I mean, it didn't bother me. I mean, you know, but apparently maybe I wasn't supposed to write it that way. And that's deleted.
Interesting.
So, yeah. Wow. You know, the universe is just right there telling you what you need to do all the time.
As long as you listen.
Just gotta listen.
As long as you listen, it's telling you.
You listen very well. You have such an intuitive side. Yes.
Oh
well, gosh, Leslie, I mean, I know we might have to have you back on because I'm sure there's more past lives to come, but gosh, thank you for being so honest and transparent with your stories. They're so helpful. They are, aren't they, Sarah? I mean,
it's huge because people don't it's such a foreign concept sometimes of what can happen and what it's like and what kind of healing you can actually have from it. And so through all these stories and how you weave it together and the different nuances, I think it will inspire a lot of people to kind of look into it. Or if they're already a little bit curious about, did I have past life? It might cement it in that now they're ready for this kind of healing.
It's probably, I mean, one of the most healing things that you can do, because I've been in talk therapy since I'm 15 years old, and I'm 72. That's a lot of years. And the most impactful period was since I've been doing the past lives. I mean, every time I would be in therapy before, we would get to a point where I get a little something going on, and I try and live with the new bit that I learned and was kind of a little better, and we do that and do that and do that. And then, but when I came back this last time and we've been doing all these past lives, this is what has really moved me forward. And I mean, it's just amazing to me how healing it is.
Yeah.
It's life-changing, truly.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing. And for all of our listeners out there, you can tell the wealth of experiences that Leslie has had and the learnings that you've had. And the fact that you are in training to be a soul coach, that people could feel very comfortable because you are so authentic and you have such a wealth of experience, and that you're going to start your soul coaching in January. So if you would like to access Leslie and her laser soul coaching, you can you'll be able to go on my website at pdsilvera.com and book Leslie there.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes. Yes.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Man.
Healers-
Thank you so much, Leslie.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It was really fun. I loved it.
Thank you.